grappling with the whole process by which advisory firms, either financial services, accountancy, or legal, are beginning to productize their services. And this is a trend we've seen actually for at least a decade. And my feeling is it's going to accelerate with the impact of COVID. So what we're seeing is advisory firms packaging up different types of consultancy. So it might be legal plus management consultancy, or adding technology to the mix. Now, the issue with this is it's quite different. It's quite a different business model from the traditional way of selling kind of hours or advice. So we're going to be investigating, what do we think the long-term trends are going to be? And most essentially, how do you go about doing that well? So how do you take an innovative idea and launch it? How do you get the pricing right? How do you predict demand? What sort of skills do you need? And how do you make sure that what you're building really meets client needs rather than just something that a partner thinks is a great idea? So that's the purpose. In terms of agenda, Alastair Beddow, the MD at Meridian West, is going to do a short introduction, short presentation. And then we're going to have a kind of panel discussion, which will take us to 9:30. And then at 9:30, there's an opportunity for you to ask questions. So either do that on the chat function or Teams, or just unmute yourself. So we should finish off about 9:40 or so. And it's going to be quite a kind of informal, interactive session. So before we kick off, just do some introductions. Paul, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, good morning. Thank you, Ben. My name is Paul Avis. I'm the Strategic Propositions Director for Canada Life Group Insurance. Formerly, I was Marketing Director, but we have an enviable challenge. We're number one in all of our markets. We're the largest insurer in group protection by employers, employees, and therefore premiums. And so my new job as Strategic Propositions Director is all about building things to penetrate the uninsured market. So an interesting challenge for me, Mr. Kent.
Brilliant, thank you. And then we have a kind of lawyer turned entrepreneur, Jeremy. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm Jeremy Tobias Tarsh. So I was a lawyer, corporate lawyer at Clifford Chance. I was moving firm and I was shocked by what I saw on the internet. So I founded Totally Legal with a friend, and that became the leading UK jobs board, which we sold in 2007 to Trinity Mirror. I subsequently launched the first due diligence legal software business, Legistics Limited, which we sold to a legal publisher, Practical Law. And then at Practical Law, I was Sheldon director that developed the core web service offering that I think has been one of the revolutions in the law. And we sold that to Thomson Reuters 2013. And I'm now in a much less tech heavy new venture on occupational mental health.
Yeah, both Paul and Jeremy have been there and done it. Simon, give us your background.
So my background's within professional services, working in accounting and law. So I worked for, back was it when it was the Big Five. I worked for Anderson, also worked for a top 50 law firm, and I ran product strategy for LexisNexis for about 8 years. So I've kind of been there and built the products for lawyers. A lot of focus around workflow technologies and so on. And then I founded my own advisory business about 1.5 years ago. Work with a mix of professional services firms, with product businesses, and with investors, so private equity and venture capital, really looking at proposition development and what makes for good proposition development.
Yeah, and we're very happy to be working with Simon at the moment. And Alastair.
Yeah, morning everyone. Alastair Beddow, MD at Meridian West. As Ben said, we've been helping a range of professional services, financial services firms for probably the last 2 decades now on their kind of, I guess, proposition and strategic development journeys. So what I wanted to do just to set the discussion up for the first few minutes was just to lay the groundwork and just give a bit of a flavour of, I think, what we're seeing in the markets and big picture trends. So as Ben said right at the start, I think we are at a point where we're seeing much more of a blending of the traditional services, professional services model with something which is much more productized. So I thought just to give some definitions to our discussion at the start. What do we mean? Well, if we think about the traditional services model, it's very adaptable. So bringing, expertise to unique, innovative client problems. It's very professional centered, so it relies on people and their expertise. And as such, it's about selling their time and expertise at relatively high margins. But that means it's harder to scale. Traditionally, you scale by growing, getting more bodies on the ground, being more highly leveraged, for example. But there's definitely a move towards a more productized business model. And by that, we mean something which is much more standardized, much more technology centered. So by offering, for example, cloud-based services in a more standardized packaged way, that's much easier to scale, but as a result is typically much more lower margin. And actually, in reality, these two things aren't kind of discrete services products. Actually, what we're seeing is a blending of the two. So quite often, maybe a core product or kind of tech package, which may have added kind of services that sit alongside it. So there's definitely a blending of those two things. And I think there's a number of reasons why we're seeing more of that in the market at the moment. So some of it is around economic pressures. Definitely at the moment, firms looking at where the opportunities for growth are going to come from, and needing to perhaps enter new markets quickly, respond to client demand. So clearly at the moment, lots of new ways of working, comfort levels around using technology as part of the professional services mix has kind of really grown exponentially for obvious reasons over the last few months. The technology itself is becoming much more sophisticated. So, very complex services can be delivered much more smartly through technology these days. But as a consequence of that, we've also seen new market entrants, often technology-led businesses coming in, trying to disrupt the market. And as a result of that, the more traditional professional services firms having to respond to that. And one of the ways they are doing that is looking at their product and service mix and trying to find ways of productizing what they do. So I think that's lots of reasons there. Just to give you a bit of a flavor of what this looks like in practice, I picked out two random examples. No kind of particular reasons for drawing on these, other than I think they illustrate really well. In PwC's case here, you can see that they're using clearly the language of product. So they've launched a series of often tech-based solutions designed to give clients, often it's about giving them better access to their own data, giving them the ability to have real-time information at their fingertips, cloud-based solutions which address a range of business challenges. On the other side, we've got DWF here, a law firm who, like many other law firms, are launching a range of other service models. So in addition to the core legal services, they've launched what they call connected services, and this is a range of other types of service model alongside some more productized offerings, so things like company secretarial, learning and development, claims management, for example. So that just gives you a bit of a flavor, and these are by no means the only two examples. They're just two that jump to my mind. But I think we're facing a bit of a challenge, however, because in order to move in this direction, it requires a strategy and a plan. It doesn't happen by accident. And actually, some of the research that I know Ben has been leading definitely shows that professional firms at the moment, we're seeing a bit of a gap between those that are becoming much more focused on proposition and innovation development, have a documented strategy, have a clear budget, and have a culture that is really supporting and encouraging that. But as you can see from the numbers here, not all firms do. And so clearly there's a challenge. So just a final thought from me, how do we get over that? Well, I think there's some really important enablers of this whole process towards business model change. I think, as I said, it doesn't happen in isolation. It happens as a result of a kind of ongoing dialogue and conversation with users, with the market testing is a big part of that. And that might be something that we can talk about in the discussion later. Thinking as well about the economic model and how that's made scalable. If we think about technology businesses and how they sell their products, they're much more sales focused. The traditional professional services firm, often the people selling the service are those that are delivering it. In a more productized business, it's more of a split between those two. And obviously that does require us to develop new skills in the business, not just in terms of the selling, but also in terms of the delivery of those productized services.
Simon, can I come to you? So Alastair's painted a picture of a kind of inevitable trend towards productization and use of technology. Is that naive? You know, we're just in COVID, firms don't have much money, they're likely to be risk averse, and clients are wanting hand-holding, kind of in-person hand-holding. So what's your sense? Are we going to see this kind of relentless rise of productization?
I mean, I think what we're not going to see is all advisors replaced by robots. That's probably the first thing to say. I think what we're seeing, though, is when I think about my own experience working within big accounting and law firms and looking at the way that's done, it's often very systematized processes that can be repeatable, but it's not often done in the most effective way. And then when I worked in product businesses and led product strategy, they're very experienced around creating products, looking at repeatable processes and packaging it up in better ways. So I think in theory, if you can merge those two things together, you can systematize the very repeatable processes and reduce your cost to the client. Also increase your margins yourself if you can do that well. But you can also retain what I would call the service wrapper, so that you keep that personalized service and as you say, retain the hand holding that people want, particularly now. So for me, there's a shift towards productization. It's not the same as saying everything will be productized. And I think certainly in professional services, it will vary based on the type of activity. So I think those things that people might have used the word commoditized about in the past in a negative sense can be productized in a positive sense, by which I mean you can productize that. You can create very compelling and appealing subscription margins as a service business, and you can put the service wrappers around that. So for example, you productize your will base, but you provide advice in the small percentage of times where people really want that added value advice.
And Paul, it'd be interesting to get your perspective in the kind of financial sector, which I think is going through a sort of digital revolution. What are you seeing? Obviously, there's examples like Hargreaves Lansdown that has kind of productized kind of IFA. What's your sense? Is it an ongoing trend?
Well, I think certain elements of financial services can be transactional. There's a much bigger move towards self-serve and having a platform where you pick and choose what you want to do. The classic would be the SIP pension, where people in effect have control of their own investments and manage their own pension funds. Of course, that means that there's a degree of, first of all, ownership. You must be proactive and engaged with that. So, you're removing the transactional tasks from the advisor, the knowledge worker, and taking them on yourself. But then the second thing, which is the important aspect, is there are inevitably complicated circumstances, specifically around things like tax and legislation about what you can do. And so when you get to a point where the transactional no longer works, you need that second level of service rather than just a platform. So I think a combination of a platform and a service for the more complicated situations means that you as a customer can understand that yes, you've got responsibility, but when you need help, something is on hand to support you. So things like capital gains, things like inheritance tax, things like pension planning, you do get to points where you think, oh my goodness, I need to talk to someone about this because my situation has changed, or this is how much I want to do, but I'm not sure whether I can. So I think a combination or a blended, I think Alastair said, approach to both technology and consultancy is the way that we'll find the market in financial services going.
Jeremy, I don't know what your perspective, because you've been there and done it. You've set up technology-based businesses. It feels like it's taken us quite a long time to get to this point. And does the partnership structure lend itself to productization? What's your view on that?
Yeah, there's a few things there. So firstly, I think the trend that I saw as a practicing lawyer was leverage.
Yeah.
Leverage is the first innovation, but leverage inevitably means that you capture knowledge and you push it down to humans, and then also you capture process. So what you've seen as the first wave of innovation is turning leverage into unbundling. So then you've seen new legal service providers and even new different kinds of people offering services that lawyers used to offer. So that's one big trend, and I don't see that reversing. I just see that kind of legal work going more and more to the kind of service center and the unbundled legal service provider, alternative provider. The second thing we haven't talked about is a lot of the knowledge that humans can do is contextualized knowledge, so they can have data and context. The really fascinating challenge for humans is AI, because AI can address vast amounts more data. And once you get pattern recognition software, you start to be able to do things with AI that humans simply can't do. So Kira is, our first legal due diligence product was essentially a leverage and a kind of unbundling play. But it had inbuilt knowledge. But once you get Kira now, for those who aren't familiar with it, you can take hundreds of thousands of contracts, and really within no time at all, you can dissect a huge amount of the obligations that live within them. So Kira have simply overtaken a huge amount of legal work that humans used to be thought capable of doing. So I think that will, as those become more and more sophisticated, they are the ones that will be truly transformative, those products, because a lot of legal advice is predictive and contextual. As for partnerships and the structure, I was talking to a friend who is running one of the businesses inside a major national, and I was speaking to the head of one of the Magic Circle's innovation businesses, and for them, the partnership model, the office politics, that is disastrous. You saw with early days, you had Be Professional, which was Deloitte and BLP. Their first business had to be taken out by Howard Rosenberg, who was the founder of it. And in the end, did it succeed? On Demand, Lawyers on Demand, same story, really couldn't innovate within the firm wrapper. So they are very significant problems. Having said that, Earlsferry is very successful.
That's my impression I get. Some of the bigger firms, A&O, been very successful. And I think what's interesting for these big firms is it's helped them sell in the really bet the farm transactional work, because they've got a choice, haven't they, between do I use a firm that does all this work manually, or do I have the blend of a super expert plus technology to do the massive document review? So it's kind of interesting. I like what you said there. It's almost 3 stages of innovation. You've got the kind of business model, unbundling was the catalyst, was the global financial crisis. Yeah. Then we have, I think we're in the midst of an automation revolution, but in time, you then have the digital outputs, you then apply AI to that, and that begins to replace the judgment of professionals. Do you basically spin out your kind of innovation and your product into a separate business or different business unit? Or do you kind of embed it within the business?
So, I mean, for me, I kind of lived that when I was at Lexis, we were looking at the next growth of how do you move towards automation, workflow, and some of the things that Jeremy touches on. And we actually set up a separate incubator within the business because it was perceived that it could be a threat to some of the core activities we were looking at. So we grew it out from that. I think it's quite successful. I think what you've got to know is you've got to know when to start embedding it into the core business. And I think quite a few of the professional services firms have sensibly taken that approach of building it separately, because in some ways it could, if you don't do it right, it could cannibalize some of the existing revenues. Because to Jeremy's example on contract review, law firms have traditionally made a lot of their money on mass contract review. Once you get technology that comes along and does that, you really have to be thinking the next 2 stages ahead around how you're going to transform your proposition, because it's not far off your clients really insisting that you use that type of technology. So I think having a separate unit gives you the breathing space to think about that. It also allows you to take a different attitude to risk, perhaps bring in different skill sets. Where I think professional services have perhaps historically been quite slow and have had an attitude of let's just ask a lawyer to take on this product thing, and they can go on a course for a couple of weeks. And you sort of think it would be fascinating if you flipped it and said, I'm a product guy, I'm going to become a lawyer, I'm just going to go on a course for a couple of weeks. so I think there's perhaps gives you a mechanism to bring in those different skills and to run it in a perhaps a more dynamic way, because I think also the processes are key to this. So thinking about things like design thinking,
Yeah,
different way of thinking about customer outcomes that services businesses aren't quite there yet in their evolution, I would say.
and Paul, the other sort of challenge is you kind of, how do you make sure what you're building the clients actually want, and how do you create that almost consumer level of kind of usability and ease? Because I think clients are pushing back on that. They want something that's really easy to use. How do you kind of use market research to ensure that your product does that?
Well, the first thing to say is a financial services organisation, we're massively regulated and scrutinised for all the products, with good customer outcomes and treating customers fairly, assessed at every stage. So going back to your original question about whether we would go outside of the business and set up a separate unit, it wouldn't really work for us because all of the knowledge is within the business. And then you pull on all the resources like the compliance team, the marketing team, you work off the brand that you've got because that's a strong brand. You don't want to dilute that in any way. So for us, it's about, first of all, research, as you said, to start the process. We might have a hypothesis. So for example, 96% of employers don't have our simple group life product. You know, that in theory is a massively underpenetrated market. So how do you go about that? You go and talk to them and say, what would you want? What would you like to buy? How would you like to buy it? And what are the features of the product that you would want? So you start with some very basic research. You then bring that back to the centre, and then you begin to evolve something. And trust me, the evolution of it, we've got a 5-stage model called Stage Gate, which starts, and each gate has to be signed off, not just by compliance, but by senior management as well. So the process of working through a product is quite onerous and hard. And then at the end of it, and this is the key point, we have a customer understanding exercise. If the customer doesn't understand what the offer is and can't get their heads into why they want to buy it, then there's no point in launching. Now we'll go to one of our focus groups, Ben, when the first half an hour, I sat almost cried as I watched people say this is awful. And then we took a quote out to there was 2 groups of employers, and they suddenly said, "Oh my God, that's really affordable. Is that a monthly premium? No, that's annual. Can we have it now?" And then we did an assessment of the product features, and I think we got a record-breaking amount of positive noise from what we've done. So, you know, starting with a technical document as we did on that day versus just showing them a quote and a 1-page flyer with some costs, just was the learning for me is people ain't interested in the technical. They're interested in how much is it, what's it do for me, and also, you know, will it solve my real problems, the things that keep me awake at night. And so some of it is common sense, some of it is detailed research, but below that there's a massive amount of work that goes into every area of product development within financial services.
Yeah, I remember that workshop. It was really interesting, and you can get feedback not just on the product, but also how it's presented. Makes a massive difference to success. Alastair, we've done quite a lot of work, well, particularly with PE funds, looking to invest in professional services. What are the specifically kind of product development research techniques that are particularly effective? I know we've been doing segmentation and different approaches to analysing price and demand. Can you tell us a bit about those?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just to make a quick comment first, I think it's, you know, just picking up what we were saying before, it's probably no surprise actually that a lot of the examples we've been talking about have come from, you know, PE-backed kind of new professional services, some of those listed, you know, law firms that have, you know, experimented with a new kind of operating model there. You know, so I think what they are smart at, and partly because they've got pressures, you know, from their kind of internal stakeholders, is to take a really data-driven approach, as Paul was saying, and a mix of, you know, being really forensic in the data and the analytics, you know, with running things like focus groups where you get real in-depth knowledge and insight about how people react emotionally, if you like, to what you put in front of them from a user experience. But I think to address your key point about, you know, data, I think just asking really, you know, simple series of questions, some quite direct questions about, you know, whether it was something that people need, whether it's something people would use, whether they see you as a credible provider, but then also looking, to Paul's point, at things around pricing levels, because one of the challenges that I think many firms face here is that they create what they think are really great solutions, but actually haven't really tested the economics of that, whether people will buy in at the right price level, and whether therefore, the cost of delivering that actually makes economic sense for business. So, you can be quite direct in some of those questions you ask.
Yeah, because I think that's one of the things I've found really interesting working with PE funds and actually kind of anyone outside of professional services is the kind of forensic approach to the kind of economics. And also something which is very counterintuitive for professionals, which is kind of forgoing a bit of margin if you can get a lot of scale.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of similarities. So I think product, whether it's the big product businesses do this very well. I think so do the PE businesses, because they're pretty ruthless in the strategic approach to it, and they really do fundamentally look at it comes down to the basics. I think always it's the what is this thing and why would someone really care about it? Is the pain point big enough, and how can we solve it? Who are we targeting, and how big's the target market? Who are the competitors, and why would this thing that we're talking about be better? And how would we actually deliver it? And how would we deliver it at the right margin? And they're quite basic questions, but my experience of professional services firms is what tends to happen is they fall into productization because a client has said, could you do this thing? I want to consume it in a different way, and could you use some tech to do it? So they build something which is essentially a product, and then they say, great, we've got this thing now, let's try and get it, give it to other people, sell it to other people, but without having gone through that front end process and without having the sales structure that we touched on earlier to look at how to scale it. And you've really got to, I always say that building a product is about 30% of the effort in my experience. 70% of it is really go to market. And I think professional services firms often underestimate that because of the way in which they've worked historically. So I think there's a lot that people can learn from the rigor of the product businesses and PE businesses. I think it's about rigor, but back to Paul's point, really focus on the customer. Everything starts with the customer. So what? Does someone really care about this? Is this a big enough pain point?
Instead of a customer, I used to say everything starts with sales. That is the customer, the buyer, not the customer. That's money. I always felt that I ought to sell my product before I made my product, and I would never authorize a practical law product to be developed until I'd seen the whites of the eyes of the key customers with a good deck and said, this is what I think it's going to look like. Is the check in the drawer if I make it? I just can't stress that enough. That's what I think entrepreneurs are good at. They're not necessarily, they're servicing a sale. And I can see that for financial services and very heavily regulated services, that is an awkward thing to do. It also does come back to your point, Ben, about innovation, true innovation within a professional services environment where you don't have that kind of selling mentality. Yes. I probably have missed doing advertising sales to pay for my degree and my holidays. Which made me unsuited to lawyering. But I think I would make that distinction.
It's certainly what we hear, because we do quite a lot of research with in-house legal, and what they say is that the law firms are coming to them with kind of fully formed, slightly over-engineered products. And what they really want is, let's come to us with an idea and we can collaborate and build this together, which professionals hate that because they always like to have full marks in their exams,
I think actually, Ben, you hit on a really key point there, because collaboration, in my experience, is central to good product development. Like Jeremy says, focus on the customer and the sale, but then collaborate in terms of how you get to that outcome, because most customers want that. When you actually speak to professionals and say, why don't you collaborate more with the client? It's basically because they want to be right first time, because everything a lawyer has been taught is go to your client with something fully finished and know all the answers. So it's a very different cultural shift to get into a more collaborative space, which is what they need to do.
So I'm conscious we've just gone slightly beyond 9:30, so now it's time for questions. Got one from Andy Knox.
Yeah, so interesting debate as ever. Just a question, just wondering if the stage is increasingly set for kind of what I'm calling kind of hybrids. So in other words, what seems to have characterized the landscape to date is, tech development, frustrations with the partnership model. Therefore, it tends to happen outside and is focused on highly commoditizable areas of process. But it feels like, and possibly this is accelerated by COVID and, the kind of massive fixed costs of trophy officers and all the rest of it. It feels like, although client, you might disagree because clients are nervous and all the rest of it, but theoretically the stage is set for kind of clean sheets of paper.
So I think you're spot on, Andy. I think a hybrid is the right way of thinking about it. So I think some of these firms are starting to realise that you can provide product for elements with what I would call as I was saying earlier, a service wrap to that. So to give you an example of a firm that's done that very well, has been a client of mine I've worked with very recently. I'm sure they won't mind me saying. So there's a firm called TLT. Very innovative partner, James Tisley, who I've worked with, and he's just that. He's a visionary lawyer who sees the path of this and sees the role of technology. We've worked together, and some of the output is you can see it online. It's a product called TLT1, and it's essentially contracting lifecycle, plugging in technology to parts of that, plugging in best of breed technology, because why would you build that yourself as a law firm, because that's not your strength. You'd partner with others, you'd bolt in the pieces of technology as they have, and you offer the higher end advisory piece so that they can offer out of the box contract review done through technology at a lower price point. And then where it gets complicated, they can offer the higher value lawyer services, and the reaction from the clients has been astounding. So I think that's an example, and you have some of these firms having the vision for that and just needing the support in the path of how to get there, and some of the techniques and so on that we've been talking about on this call. So I think you're spot on. I think that is, but they're relatively few and far between at the moment.
Okay, now we've got another good question, which is, what's the one practical tip you would give to the leadership team or marketeers within professional firms and financial advisory firms? What you've learned. So, Alastair, what's your tip?
People have used the word collaboration, and I think that's that has to go at the heart of this. This is a kind of blend of where is the market at, what does it want, how is its needs changing, where are you really credible and capable, and blending those two things together on a kind of collaborative way. This doesn't happen in isolation, it doesn't happen in a silo, and that's something that is a challenge for professional firms, but is absolutely necessary.
Perfect. Paul, your top tip?
Be obsessive about understanding the customer, what keeps them awake, what problem you're solving, and most importantly, having done that job, keep it simple. Make it easy for them to understand and buy what you've produced. I think that's the recipe for success.
Yeah. Jeremy?
Never forget that innovation is largely doomed to fail if it's genuine innovation, even the private equity, everybody. It requires tremendous persistence, tremendous focus on burn rate, not loading up all kinds of people and other people. Real absolute ruthlessness about what is the minimum value product that you're getting out there that people are going to buy.
Don't over-engineer it.
Exactly. And business, I have seen so many larger orgs obsess about the business plan. A business plan is a work of fiction, a necessary work of fiction, but it is the biggest killer in most large organizations of innovation. So, sometimes the thing that made Practical Law a multi-$100 million business was by far the longest and most problematic thing it took to develop. So at some level, it's that sweet spot between belief, the obsessiveness and the perseverance, and the ruthless focus on just the customer and the value. It's in that sweet spot that you're going to succeed.
to Jeremy's point, if you can't put it on a page, then you're going wrong. It's really easy to write 50 pages on something in a detailed business plan.
I'm falling in love with your product.
It's hard to get it concisely on one page. So I use these templates that I call game plans, and it basically goes through what is it, why would someone care about it, who are you delivering it to, what does it differ from the competitors, and how are you going to deliver it? And if you can't encapsulate all of that very succinctly, then don't do it, and think that through up front. And then the biggest part of those sheets is often standing in the customer's shoes, asking the so what question. It's very easy, and I've been there and done it, where you convince yourself you've got an amazing product idea and you can spend a real lot of money on it, and you can discount customer views as really not understanding, and you've got the Steve Jobs.
They don't get it.
Sometimes you need to be able to stand back, and the hardest things I've ever done was been stopping developing something when you just realize actually this isn't the right path, shutting something down. So I think having the big picture and really focusing on so what to the customer.
Brilliant. Thanks, guys. Thanks for great debate and some great sort of advice, practical advice there.